Hey folks, wanted to make a quick video on the buried 440 locomotive south of Kinsley, Kansas. I've had people reach out and want to see what we're doing with this thing. So before we get into that, if you're new to the channel or you just hopped on this video, go check out the two videos I made before this. One, we didn't find the locomotive, and the second one we do, but the second video explains the history of the railroad and shows us finding the locomotive. So I highly suggest going to check those out so you can kind of get caught up to speed with what's going on. So after my boy and I found the locomotive a couple months ago, I posted the video and I've had a lot of interest from people after we found it. And this locomotive is literally a local legend in Kinsley, Kansas. Everybody in Kinsley, Kansas knows about it, but they've never seen it. And you ask anybody outside of Kinsley or even on the internet, they don't know anything about it. It basically doesn't exist, except for a few websites from the early 2000s, which I explained in my last video. That's kind of what got me into finding this locomotive. So after we found it, I started reaching out to people that were more knowledgeable on the history of the Wichita Northwestern Rail Road. And let me tell you, I have met some of the best, most humble, genuine, nicest, most knowledgeable people in this process. It has been an absolute treat. I have made new friends, and it's just been a blast, finding this history. There's nothing left of this railroad. This is the last big piece. There's no locomotives left. There's no ties left. There's some bridge pilings down at the river and some old railroad spikes and a few pictures at the Edwards County Museum. It isn't much. So, 100 years from now, the history could be lost. So, at any rate, let's get into the update. So here's what we've done up to this point. Obviously, I have the local Edwards County Historical Society interested, and others interested as well on, finding the history and possibly seeing about getting this thing raised. So it was suggested to us, the group of guys helping me with the research on this, that we reach out to the Kansas Historical Society. And that's what we did. The archaeological department suggested to me to fill out a site map and take some measurements and kind of give them an idea with what we're working with. I really want them involved because they're professionals. They've probably dug things up similar to this, and I want this site protected if it is never able to be dug up. I don't want to see it be scrapped, even if it's just a firebox, which I'll get to that later in the video. So also, they suggested to me that we reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers after we get the site map filled out and see, technically this is the Arkansas River, right? And the river doesn't have water in it. It doesn't have water from basically Kinsley, where we're at, all the way to Lake in Kansas, which is way far west, like 2.5 hours. But it's still a waterway, and we need to get a hold of the Army Corps of Engineers to technically really get permission to dig this thing up. We can't just go digging things up that's not ours, right? Basically, on this third trip, we went out to really try to gather some good solid info, and we really left with more questions than answers. So we went out. We're not supposed to dig, but we can probe, right? So basically I have a piece of rod on a T, and we're probing the ground, hitting metal, and we're putting flags in the ground and taking measurements. And to kind of give you an idea about this locomotive, she's 26 foot long, right? And so what we're kind of doing from the corner of the firebox, we're kind of making a half radius of 26 feet, which just to the east of the locomotive, you can still see the pylons you'll see in the video of the old bridge. So we kind of, made a 26-foot radius, and we really just started going to town probing. And believe it or not, even the wet ground in Kansas is really hard. So me and another guy were running that T post, and we're getting pretty wore out. But nonetheless, a weird thing that we found was completely to the south of the locomotive, basically parallel to the boiler, 26 feet away, we hit more metal. And it doesn't make sense. And that's actually down in the river bottom. Where the locomotive's sitting, it's kind of up on the bank. And it's sitting at a 20-degree angle roughly, going east and west. So that's another weird thing that we need to kind of get dug up to figure out what we're working with. And that, that's essentially what we're doing here. We're going to get as much information as we can, and then we're going to fill this paperwork out and see how the Kansas Archaeological Department can help us with being able to basically dig part of this locomotive up to get more information on how much is there, and hopefully get the funds and the permissions to get it dug up. So if we're looking at the locomotive, we have a pretty good idea that we think the boiler has been cut off. And that kind of saddens me, because this thing's 26 foot long, and according to the probe, we're not getting all 26 feet. So when you're looking down at the, I'll put a picture up here, when you're looking down at the firebox to the right, we think the boiler was sticking up. And you would think you'd be seeing some drive wheels since the firebox and boiler is laying on its side, which you're not seeing any. I mean, we know the tender's been scrapped, and we heard that in the 40s or 50s, some of the locomotive was scrapped once the river started receding and no longer flows. So, what's really intriguing is what is the weird metal that we're hitting 20-something feet away to the south? Is that part of the locomotive? I don't know. But also, too, we can't see what's on the other side, and that's what makes this exciting. If we can hand dig this thing down to that point after we get all the permissions done, it'd be so awesome to find the drive wheels and even the back of the firebox. Like, if there's still some handles or some plumbing, like, you don't know what you're going to find. When Rhett and I were digging out there last time, down in the firebox, we were pulling pieces of coal out. That's pretty cool. So, in closing here, the ultimate goal is to have this thing dug up and displayed. This will be the last existing big piece of this railroad. And I firmly believe that if we don't get this thing dug up, I think 100 years from now, the history of the Wichita Northwestern will be completely forgot about. There's no big pieces that can remind people of this railroad. You can drive across the United States and see huge big boy whatever locomotives that say ATSF on them. That's always going to be remembered. You're going to look at those locomotives and remember that railroad. But if we don't get this dug up, I think that history is going to be lost. So, I don't know. I'll update everybody as we go. I know this is a lot of me rambling on, but I wanted to update people. And maybe 6 months before you guys hear me talk about this railroad again. There's a lot of kind of politics that go behind it, and there's a lot of people helping. So, I don't know. My hope is that in the near future, we can fundraise after everything is approved, and even have volunteers come out. I think it'd be awesome to hand dig this thing to at least see what's left and what it's going to take to get it out. So I appreciate you guys watching. If you get a chance, go check out the other 2 videos, and we'll update you as soon as we get more information. So thanks for watching.